in need.
Computer says no. I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
Bob and Jenna.
Vegans don't eat eggs.
Congratulations, you've killed a sentient being.
We no longer enslave animals for food purposes.
You're working hard to put food on your family. I know the human being and fish can coexist peacefully.
Baba Jenna. Woo! Just because he doesn't eat it doesn't mean he doesn't beat it.
Oh my God, that is totally not vegan.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's cold.
Happy meat. Happy meat. Happy meat. Eat me. Eat me. Just because he doesn't eat it doesn't mean he doesn't beat it.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Ooh, I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
Vegans don't eat eggs.
Didn't you miss us? We're back.
Coming to you from high atop their elite fortress of moral superiority, here are your protein-deficient hosts, Bob and Jenna.
Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Bob.
And Jenna.
And oh my my fucking God, we're back for another podcast.
We're still alive.
We are still alive. Thank you for all the emails, voicemails, everything else. We have had an incredibly busy month and a half or so, but we're back. We're alive. We're doing well. We're going to get back into this shit. It's just that we've been working like 12-hour days, 6 days a week roughly, or more, for about the last 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's been intense.
It has been. You just get up, go to work, be at work all day until like 9 o'clock, come home, eat dinner, watch like half an hour TV and go to bed.
Yeah, it's been insane. But suffice to say, we're starting to approach a place where we're going to be able to get back into this. And we're here. We're ready to podcast. And we're going to bring you as much as we can today. We're a little rusty. We're like sitting down to do this. We're like, fuck. How do you do this?
Yeah.
I forget. What button do I push? Oh, you want to tweak my knobs? Anyway, we've got kind of a See, I can't.
Yeah, we're rusty.
Short-ish. Can you say that?
Shortish.
Thank you. Show today. We're going to talk about a couple brief things, and then we're going to run an interview that we did back in July.
Like a long ass time ago.
Yeah, we did an interview a long time ago and never got it on the show because we ran out of shows. Well, we ran out of time to do shows, and that interview is with Dr. Monty from the FitnessRocks.org podcast. So we will run that in the second half of the show. But in the first half of the show, we want to talk about some recent things. I mean, there's been so much going on in the media that we have to talk about with regard to Michael Vick. I know for a lot of you, this is an old story. You're tired of hearing about it. But when I heard this Whoopi Goldberg shit, you have to talk too.
Oh, yeah. I'm just, yeah, you look like you're going to say something else. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, when I heard this Whoopi Goldberg shit, I was floored. I couldn't believe that she would actually say this.
Yeah.
And this is what she said. On The View of all places.
There are all of these very, very strong opinions about it. And one of the things I haven't heard anybody say is, from his background, this is not an unusual thing for where he comes from. It's like cockfighting.
Part of the country he comes from.
It's like cockfighting in Puerto Rico. There are certain things that are indicative to certain parts of our country.
What part of the country is this?
He's from the South. He's from the deep South.
And
dogfighting is a lot, and there's a lot of it
torturing and dog murdering, though.
Well, that's part.
Dog murdering.
It's part of the thing. It's
part of the fun, right? And just,
I don't think it's the fun. I don't think they see it that way. I mean, you're a dog lover.
It's a part of their culture for a long time.
For a lot of people, dogs are sport. It's not, and so I just thought it was interesting because it seemed like a light went off in his head when he realized that this was something that the entire country really didn't appreciate.
The poor man. It was his culture.
He's just a victim of his culture.
Right.
And a victim of PETA, and a victim of all those horrible animal rights activists who went after him.
It's his culture, though.
Right.
Can we really? I mean, what do you think of that idea?
It's fucking ridiculous.
Of course, it's ridiculous.
I mean, because that's what people use. Well, it's our tradition and our culture, so we're going to eat meat, and that's how we justify it. We've always done it, so therefore, it's okay.
Hey, man, you can use that exact same argument about culture to justify flying the Confederate flag, to justify, people use the culture argument all throughout, have used the culture argument all throughout the South, and actually all throughout the United States to justify racist domination. This is a country that is incredibly racist from its very beginnings, the United States. And we could argue, hey, it's our culture to exploit people of color. Look, we've been doing it since, 1492. We're good at it. Well, we haven't been doing it since 1492, but you get the idea, right? That could be our culture.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with the dog.
I'm wondering, Molly's crying, and I don't know why.
I have no idea.
He's a freak. But the whole culture argument is strange to me. It's like, how can it be someone's culture? How can we accept? Well, let's put it another way. If we take culture as an explanation for any kind of exploitative behavior, that's ridiculous, because you could put anything into culture and argue that it's just a cultural trait and it should be excused.
Right. Yeah, so all, of white culture should be excused for exploiting, the third world all throughout its history. Because, well, it's our culture.
It's our culture.
That's what we've done. So, shit. Then that's the way it is, right?
Absolutely.
Makes it okay.
It's the culture to commit genocide, or it's the culture to do any kind of horrible, horrible wrong in the world. And I understand. I understand that, some people want to think that way and want to make that kind of argument, but it's ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know. It's just... And one day we were in a hotel room and flipping through the channels, and ESPN was on, and we actually paused on it for like probably the longest we've ever watched ESPN
5 minutes
before.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about Michael Vick, and there's this guy on, and he was like making Michael Vick out to be this huge victim of the media and everything. And it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we're not picking on him, for any other reason besides the fact that he's a horrible person, that he committed these horrible acts against other sentient beings.
That's right.
And it's just ridiculous. And of course, I don't know.
We no longer enslave animals for food purposes.
I wish.
Or for fighting purposes.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing about it. I mean, he bred these animals, he killed them when they didn't perform as he wanted them to.
Yeah, in horrible ways.
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Not that it would have been all right if he killed them in less horrible ways.
Of course not.
But he killed them, and he abused them, and he let them fight for his own entertainment and for no other reason. There is no other reason for it. It's just his own entertainment. And money, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
But I kind of throw that in with
and
entertainment.
power.
Yeah, and feeling like a man. It's just ridiculous to me that suddenly people are going to rush to his defense and defend him. Now, I understand the critique from the other side, which is to say, look, he's being excoriated in the media because he's a black man, right? I think that's true, actually. I think that there are a lot of racist white people in America who are more than ready to look at Michael Vick and go, well, goddamn, I knew it. It would be a black guy. There are a lot of racist people in America, and there are a lot of fucking racist people in the animal rights movement who I know are happy to look at that and go, yeah, those savages, right? But that has to be separated out. We have to, I think it's important. I think it's important to be careful, right? I think that there is certainly a media critique to be made that he was identified and targeted in some of the ways he was targeted because he was a black male in this country. And being a black male in this country is a dangerous thing to be. The odds are good. 1 in 3 that if you're a black male in this country, you're going to prison. Okay, so black males are discriminated against in every possible way in this country, and I have no doubt that racist attitudes about Michael Vick played into how he was viewed. Nevertheless, that does not excuse anything that man did.
Nope, not at all.
Nothing at all.
Nope.
Because everything he did clearly is part of this kind of trouble that he has as a man abusing animals, right? And so to you, I understand the critique that, he was probably treated poorly because he was black, but I think he deserved to be treated poorly. When it comes down to it, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not agreeing with the people like, Al Sharpton who who I believe argued the same line of thinking, oh, where will white man be all right? No, I don't think that. I do think, though, that, probably a lot of people out there use this in a way that, lived up to some stereotypes. So I think that there are two things. I think that we got to be careful about these two things, right?
Sure.
We can't dismiss it as his culture, and we can't say, oh, yeah, it's just the way it is in the South. I don't think that just putting something into the container of culture and then suddenly labeling that container as okay, whatever we put in here is okay.
Right. Like apparently it's okay to have cockfighting in Puerto Rico, according to Whoopi Goldberg as well. It's like, no, it's still wrong.
It's still wrong. But that's the thing. I'm teaching a class on human rights, and a lot of the arguments you read against human rights say the same thing. That, some places say, look, we shouldn't have Western-dominated human rights imposed upon our culture because we have a culture that says that it's okay to lock women in a house, or it's okay to do, crazy exploitative things to people.
Right.
Female genital mutilation.
Yeah.
That one always comes up. Female genital mutilation. It's okay to cut your clitoris off or sew up your vagina. Your vajayjay. We're just going to sew it up. What?
You don't need it.
You don't need your vajayjay. We're just going to sew it up. What? Okay, so against that framework, right? There is this idea of human rights, which says, look, everybody by virtue of being a human being has a right to have their bodily integrity simply because they are part of this community that we call humanity. And animal rights activists, they don't simply exclude on the basis of species. We look at it and go, well, hey, anybody who's sentient should have that basis not to be fucked with, simply because they are sentient, right?
Right.
So if we're going to be able to do that for human rights, and I think there's a very strong argument to be made for doing that for human rights, we should do the same thing for animal rights. Absolutely, and I think we should apply it to our culture. Now, I mean, I'm sure all of you have heard about Gary Francione being on the O'Reilly Factor and all these other things, talking about this issue of how we are all quote unquote Michael Vick, because Michael Vick is cruel and barbarous and horrible in all of those ways for doing the things he did, but all the things that we as a culture do for the production of meat are not all that much different.
No, in fact, it could be worse because we're asking other people to do it for us and we're pushing it aside and doing it on a humongous scale.
Absolutely. And
so, yeah, but we use the same exact arguments to justify it. Oh, well, it's our culture and we need to do it. And it tastes good.
It's our culture, right? I mean, we hear that all the time. And, Michael Vick shocked a dog, right? Or two. Wasn't that one of the ways that he did it?
Probably.
I don't remember for sure, but
drowned him. I don't know.
Horrible ways of dying.
Right.
But if you recall, I don't know, a while ago when we were talking about Temple Grandin on the show, she talked about how you could incapacitate animals by shocking them for food. So it's no different. And Francione is absolutely right. We are all essentially Michael Vick if you eat meat.
Yeah.
Or participate.
I mean, pigs in the slaughterhouse are hung up by their legs, and if they're not incapacitated properly, drown or are scalded to death in the hot water bath.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's horrendous.
It is horrendous. So, I don't want to go too much further with this because it's been covered repeatedly and, it's been done. And what we're saying is not new.
No, but it's been ongoing for a while, and I think it was important to talk about.
I think so, too.
It's been out there.
Yeah.
It's one of the big things lately.
Absolutely.
We got to catch up. We're behind.
We are behind. And actually, speaking of being behind, our email situation, my email situation is dire. I have not checked my Vegan Freak email in probably 2 months.
I've been reading them, but I have not responded to just about anything.
I haven't even been reading them. I have not had the time. And the reason I haven't had the time, I've been finishing my book. And my book is done. My book is done. You can pre-order it on Amazon even if you're feeling particularly, if you're really excited about it. My editor told me that he thinks that my animal rights movement pass will be revoked when the book comes out. This could well be the case. However, all of you people who listen to Vegan Freak Radio, you will recognize some of the themes in the book that you hear on the radio show.
Yeah, it won't be a surprise to him. It's the same kinds of things we always talk about.
It will be a surprise. Jenna, you shouldn't say it wouldn't be a surprise. It's like, oh yeah, it's the same stuff we talk about on the show. Don't bother buying the book.
No, it's not what I mean.
Who needs the book?
That's not what I mean.
Just watch the movie. No, I'm kidding around. No. Anyway, it'll be out in November, so it's coming out soon.
Yeah, it is soon.
Yep. So we should move on. I want to talk about something else too.
Okay.
the other day, now, you know, I'm an academic, I'm a professor. So every so often I am fortunate or unfortunate enough to be invited to the president's house for dinner. It's a good thing in general. And, you know, it's like going to your boss's house for dinner, except at a much bigger level. So I went. I was invited and I went. I had to put my fucking suit on. I was wearing a suit. Everybody in the building was like, Bob's wearing a suit. You know, it's like no one could wrap their head around.
Bob owns a suit.
Yeah, they were surprised by that too. You know, and I was like, yeah, I clean up okay. I can look pretty good. You know,
You can wear something other than a black T-shirt. Yeah.
I cover up the tattoos, and you know everything works out. So everybody was surprised I was wearing a suit. Wore a suit, went to the president's house for dinner, and I had this really interesting moment that made me think of all of our Vegan Freak Radio listeners out there, because I don't know. I guess I hadn't been out to eat with non-vegan or vegetarian people in a while, and I guess I haven't had to think about it. But I sat down at this table. It was assigned seating because we're supposed to get to know new students who are coming, new students of color. We're supposed to get to know them, and so it was assigned seating, and I was at this table full of people. Only so Emmy.
What did you do?
Sock.
Where'd you find that, Em?
Anyway, what? Are we not paying enough attention to you, Emmy? Emmy is trying to chew up one of my organic cotton socks. That will get you kicked out of the hippie ecosexual club, Emmy. Sounds like Mole's getting into some trouble too.
Yeah, they're both going to the bedroom and finding things and bringing them in here.
Oh no!
Great.
I still want them to put holes in things I like.
Emmy's good at putting holes in your underwear.
I know. I've got this one pair of underwear that I really like, and now they've got this hole in the ass, but near the top of the band. There's this like big. Well, it's not that big of a hole, is it? It's probably about. I'm holding up my hands to show you.
Yeah, right.
To show you all out there how big it is, and yeah,
it's a nice sized blowhole. Yeah,
a blowhole.
For all the vegans, they fart, so
I don't ever.
No,
not me. I never ever fart.
I'm gonna have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
Yeah, you never fart, so It's just like vegans never talk about farts or poop or.
Vegans always talk about poop. You get vegans together and they're going to be talking about poop. There's no question about it.
So yeah.
Anyway,
let's hope the dogs have calmed down.
Where was I? Oh yeah. So I went to the president's house for dinner. I had to go, and there was assigned seating and all this other stuff, and I had to. It was to get to know new students, certain new students. So I went and I sat down, and of course there was prime rib, and there was all this other meaty stuff, chicken and things like that. And I'll say in the past, the president's house, they've hooked me up pretty well. Sometimes I get like a little grilled tofu thing.
Nice.
But this time it was kind of a buffet style thing, so they didn't hook me up. So I went over to the guy who runs it, and I said, is there anything vegan? And he's like, well, there's a salad, and there's orzo. There's only a little bit of Parmesan in the orzo. And I was like...
yeah, you can pick it off.
Yeah. And I was thinking like, only... If I eat a little bit of animal products, it's better, right?
It's okay.
Yeah. I didn't even... I just, okay. And then he's like, well, the corn's all right. And the corn wasn't all right. There was this yellowish liquid floating in it with a lot of like little puddles of shiny, anyway.
Yeah.
It was corn in butter. No question about it. And there were some grilled vegetables and a salad. So I had grilled vegetables and a salad.
What a fucking surprise.
What a huge surprise, right? Grilled vegetables. Hasn't every vegetarian out there had grilled vegetables at some point or another in their life?
Of course.
From some restaurant somewhere because they can't figure out anything else to make.
Right.
So anyway, I had the grilled vegetables and I sat down. Everybody else is eating this meat and they're like, the meat's so good and all this other, meaty stuff. And so they're kind of quizzing me. They're like, well, are you a vegetarian or something? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a vegan. They're like, oh, you're a vegan? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a vegan. It's like, oh, does that mean you don't eat milk? And I'm like, no, I don't drink milk. And they're like, what about eggs? Do you eat? And I'm like, no, I don't eat eggs.
Vegans don't eat eggs.
Vegans don't eat eggs.
What if a monkey made you a sandwich? Would you eat it then?
No, I wouldn't eat a sandwich if it was made for me by a monkey. And all of these questions about, don't you miss it? And this was where the conversation was going, right? Everyone was like, wow, that's so strong and so brave of you. Like I had braved some kind of, invading army or something,
Right. Like you're the martyr.
Right.
Because I'm not going to eat this. No.
Yeah. And so it became this, wow, I could never do that. Mm-hmm. I really admire, and they weren't being mean. They were like, I really admire that. That's really strong of you. You've got so much willpower and don't you ever miss it and all this other stuff. And I was like, no, I don't miss it. It isn't that hard. And I don't really have that much willpower when it comes down to it. I mean, maybe that's not true, but I'm not sure. You know, in general, I tend to think of myself as having what would be average willpower, you know? So what I kind of mentioned to them, I didn't really go into a lot of depth. I just said, look, for me, it's a pretty straightforward decision because it's an ethical one. You know, I'm vegan for animal rights reasons. And that kind of went, you know, it was like, it like sucked the oxygen out of, you know, it was like, all the oxygen was like gone. And everybody's like, yeah, everybody starts looking around there. And you're like, yeah, what about that? Yeah, anyway. So what occurred to me afterward was that it's interesting for people because when they say, oh, it's so hard, or I couldn't do that or whatever. I think what people don't realize is what it means to be an ethical vegan, you know? Because for me, being an ethical vegan, that shit does not look good to me. And to some of you, it may look good, perhaps. And so I don't want to generalize or overgeneralize or try to make my experience like everyone's. But I'm just trying to say it's for me. When I look at that stuff, it might as well be human flesh on a plate. It disgusts me that much. Because I know what it is. And so ethically speaking, even if I have memories of having eaten it and all that other stuff, ethically speaking, it bothers me enough that I don't find it attractive or interesting.
Yep.
Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah. Well, we had to go. So we've done a lot of socializing, like
Yeah,
way more than we normally do.
Yeah, we're
like
pretty antisocial.
Yeah, we had, you know, go to these functions that you kind of have to go to. So we had to go to this dinner at for my department.
It wasn't.
It wasn't bad.
No, that was fine.
It wasn't. It was fine, but it's just funny the things that come up, and you know, we are never around meat because we don't go out to eat ever.
Yeah.
And you know, we're at home and we're both vegans, so we never see it. And so they, you know, these people brought this huge steak and a bunch of chicken, and they were grilling it. And there it was sitting at the center of the table. Like, you know, it was buffet style kind of thing. But
Sure.
there it was. And I was just like, I looked at it and it made me so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, I really just had this overwhelming feeling of sadness looking at that pile of beef there. Because I was like, I knew what the animal had to go through, you know, to produce, you know, quote unquote, produce that. It's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
So yeah, but it's funny the way some people react. Like my one friend, she's like, she sent me this email earlier in the week. Do you and Bob eat rice with nuts and vegetables? I'm like, as long as you don't make it with butter or chicken stock, yeah.
Well, she's just trying to be considerate.
I know. And then she was like going through the food. She's like, is there anything you can eat? I'm like, don't worry about us. You know, we'll survive. We know how you know, we'll make do. It doesn't matter.
We always do.
But then she was like going through the ingredients and everything. She's like, she was going through this one. It was like a tomato dish, and it looked on the surface looked okay.
It looked
and
good.
she was going through she's like, okay, tomatoes and onions. She's like, you eat onions? I'm like, yes, we eat onions. kind of a vegetable.
But you know that there are some people who don't eat onions and garlic, right?
I guess, yeah, I suppose so.
You know, like at that restaurant in the Lower East Side, what's it called?
Tian Garden?
Yeah, man, they don't do like
They
onions
don't
and
do.
garlic.
Yeah, you're right.
So I forget what that's all about.
I forget.
Some kind of religious
some
shit.
kind of Zen thing. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway.
I'm sure someone will know.
It's like a yin yang. I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
Don't the you know, the bald people in the airport, the Krishna, Hare Krishnas. They don't do that shit, do they? They don't eat garlic and onions, do
I don't
they?
know.
I don't think so. Anyway, I could be wrong about that too.
Anyway,
I talk out of my ass constantly.
So she's like, yeah. So anyway, she's going through the ingredients. She's like, oh, there's butter in it.
Oh.
I was like, and honey.
And honey.
I was like, oh, okay, so no, won't eat that. So, but I mean, but then other people were really nice and courteous. Like these other people brought this lentil salad dish, and the recipe called for chicken stock, and they didn't put it in. They put water in because they knew that if they put water in, we could eat it.
Yeah, isn't that?
I was like, that was
cool.
so considerate.
That was
of
really
them.
cool.
I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You know,
we're lucky though. Academia tends to have a higher tolerance for weirdos.
Yeah.
So it's not so strange, you know, for us to be vegans in that kind of context. People are used to weirdness in academia, I think.
I think so too.
And eccentricity and things like that. So, you know, even the tattoos, they like weird people out, but they're okay with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And people just generally are okay with shit like that. So
yeah, like people definitely don't understand it at all.
No.
But they'll be like, okay, well,
this is what you are.
This is what you are. So
there you go.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it's all right. So, you know, overall, I think it's cool, but I think some people overthink it a little much. So
What was that?
I don't know.
Some sort of distortion. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so for me, it was an interesting meal because I was able to talk to people about that stuff. And then dessert came. And they were like, wow, don't you miss dessert and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, it's not that hard to veganize most of the stuff you're eating, number one. And number two, I'm basically diabetic and can't eat that shit anyway, you know? So that kind of shut that one down.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because not only are we vegan, we also avoid flour and sugar. And
yeah, I told them that too.
Low GI, low fat.
Right. I told them that you know, we mostly we avoid a lot of sugar and stuff too. And this one girl at the table said, and I think she's probably right about this for a lot of people, including a lot of vegans. She said it would probably be easier for me to give up meat than it would be to give up sugar. She said, I can't give up sugar. Like I could probably be a vegetarian. I could probably even be a vegan, but sugar, I could have a hard time giving up sugar. And I think that's true for a lot of vegans. But whatever. Not everybody has the same fucked up genetics I have. So not everybody needs to worry about it.
No, they don't.
But probably they do and don't know it yet.
It's possible.
Dun, dun, dun. So was there anything else you want to talk about before we move on to our...
No, but that is a nice segue into our interview, though.
It is indeed. So this interview is one we did way back in mid-July, with Dr. Monte from the fitnessrocks.org podcast. Now, Dr. Monte, as we talk about with him, he's not quite a vegan.
Yes, but don't give him shit for that, because, it's okay. He's a mainstream doctor and this fitness expert, and he's really cool with veganism.
He is.
And so I think that's important.
He is. So, listen with something of an open mind. But he is he's very much concerned with a plant-based diet, and I think he does a lot to promote that. So from that perspective, I feel like it's a good thing. And his podcast is actually quite entertaining and good if you're into fitness stuff.
And nutrition.
Absolutely. And he knows his shit. Like he digs into the medical journals and he does research, and what you're getting from him is the real deal, unlike when we talk about this stuff and it comes directly out of our bums. Correct?
Correct.
So
but plus, just to add, he's not one of these people who says, oh yeah, I'm vegan, and then occasionally eats things that aren't vegan.
Right.
No, he doesn't want to call himself vegan because he will occasionally eat things that aren't vegan. So
that's true.
I think that's important.
This is true. So even though we absolutely support full-fledged veganism from start to finish or whatever, I'm going to work on Dr. Monte. I think we could get Dr. Monte there. I mean,
I think we could too.
He's at least sympathetic to the notions of ethical veganism, so I think we get him there. And anyway, check out Dr. Monte's podcast. Check out this interview, and we'll be back when it is over. We're here with Dr. Monte Ladner. Dr. Monte is the host of Fitness Rocks podcast at fitnessrocks.org. And he's recently come out with a new audiobook, a really compelling audiobook called Weight Loss, How They Did It for People Who Changed Their Lives Forever. I was turned on to the Fitness Rocks podcast while I was on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and I was also turned on to it by one of our listeners, and I've been listening pretty religiously since, and I like the show a great deal, and I thought it'd be great to have Dr. Monte on the show. So welcome to the show.
Bob and Jenna, thank you very much for having me.
It's our pleasure. So I guess maybe a good way to begin would be for you to talk a little bit about the kind of work you do to our listeners. What's your podcast about, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about your new audiobook.
Sure. Well, Fitness Rocks is a podcast that I've been doing for just over a year. I started in June of 2006 and have posted, I think, right around 70 shows at this point. I've got 54 regular podcasts, and then I was doing a series of short midweek podcasts for several weeks. And it's really, the show is sort of a outgrowth of an interest I had while I was still practicing medicine, of trying to, for lack of a better phrase, teach my patients how to be healthy or how to take care of themselves. And I retired early from medicine in 2003 for a lot of reasons, all of which surrounded just being frustrated. But one of the things that frustrated me was that the patients that I saw every day in my clinic, year after year, just simply weren't taking care of themselves. And I just could not impress upon them the central role that diet and exercise had in helping to treat, manage, and even cure the diseases that they had. And I just ended up sort of giving up on the practice of medicine. And when looking for something to do with the rest of my life, I started to think about writing. And then podcasting came up, and I thought it sounded like a neat idea. So I just literally took the conversations that I wanted to have with patients and started talking to a microphone in an extra room in our house and putting them on the internet. And that's pretty much the history of Fitness Rocks. It's been a fun thing to do.
What I like about your podcast also is that, you're often in there quoting medical journals and quoting, doing your research and quoting peer-reviewed articles. And I think that's great.
I'm glad you said that, because that's obviously the other thing. There's the one thing I noticed when I would talk to patients about health and fitness and the basics of how to be healthy, there was a tremendous amount of confusion, and they would often bring in articles from newspapers and magazines that would appear to be providing contradictory evidence. And the patients justifiably would be expressing their own frustration with what seemed to be a very confusing and constantly changing message. And so what seemed important to me was to go to the medical research, which has been remarkably consistent over the last several decades, really since the 1950s, when a researcher named Ansel Keys did something called the 7 Countries Study, where he looked at diets and lifestyle habits in 7 countries around the world and showed significant differences in health outcomes based on dietary habits and physical activity habits. And the research that has followed on his work has been consistent throughout the next 50 or 60 years, showing that diets high in fruits and vegetables and healthy oils from olive oil and nuts and things like that are associated with much, much lower rates of chronic diseases, the diseases that plague us today: hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. There's just no questioning the relationship between what we eat and our health. So that's why I chose to always reference my podcast to medical journal articles. And the other reason is that there's so much bad information being put forth by a variety of individuals, often who are selling things like dietary supplements, that is based on no science at all. And so it was important to me to be able to back up what I'm saying with a reference to medical journal articles.
Interesting. I was wondering, you just talked about that study that I already forgot the name of it. I'm sorry, I meant to write it down. But that would seem to contradict a lot of kind of the stuff that was going on around Atkins. I mean, what's your opinion of the Atkins diet?
Yeah, I've gotten myself into a lot of trouble talking about the Atkins diet, because the people that adhere to the diet are very passionate about their success. And my attitude is good for them. They've lost weight. But the Atkins diet, like so many other fad diets, is loosely based on science and really incorporates some broad generalizations and is filled with a lot of inaccuracies. But basically, any diet, Atkins or otherwise, that recommends eliminating an entire food group, in this case carbohydrates, which is really, I guess, better classified as a macronutrient, just doesn't make any sense. And besides that, carbohydrate-containing foods like fruits and vegetables are the primary source of healthy foods in our diet. They're loaded not only with the usual macronutrients, carbohydrates and proteins and fats, but they're full of hundreds of chemicals called phytochemicals, meaning plant chemicals, that have a variety of functions within our body, antioxidant and anti-inflammatory functions that are linked with lower risks of disease and higher health rates. So to just simply say we're not going to eat carbohydrates because of some bizarre idea of how that affects blood sugar levels and insulin levels is really an incomplete thought process, and it's not a reasonable thing to do. I will say where Atkins got it right, and I think this is really kind of in subsequent revisions of their diet, is the elimination of refined or processed carbohydrates, which we talked about when we talked with you on our show. That does make sense, and we can get into that later if you want to, but refined carbohydrates are devoid of the phytochemicals that I just talked about, They've all been processed out, and you're left with just a starchy product that has little more than empty calories and nothing that's going to promote your health. So I certainly would agree with Atkins Diet people that like the Atkins Diet in regards to eliminating refined carbohydrates.
So when you say a plant-based diet is the most beneficial diet, what exactly do you mean by plant-based then? And what are the benefits? You mentioned phytochemicals, but maybe you can go into a little bit more detail.
Sure. Well, of course, in our standard American diet, when you go to your favorite restaurant and you order anything, it always comes as a plate with a large chunk of meat in the center, and then just a sprinkling of some sort of vegetable, which is usually a potato in one form or another, fried or mashed or baked. And that's about it. And then bread. So there's very little in the way of fresh green vegetables, which could be any number of different types, spinach, kale, broccoli, cauliflower. I mean, the list is ended. There's hundreds. So a plant-based diet would sort of reverse that ratio and have the biggest thing on your plate be plants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, whole grains like rice or quinoa, things like that, and either no meat at all, which is I tend to eat pretty much vegetarian and really almost vegan. Probably make some lapses occasionally, but for the most part, I'm pretty much a vegan for health reasons, predominantly. But I certainly agree with your attitude about the way animals are treated, which is just horrifying. But that would be sort of a basic example or definition of a plant-based diet, where the majority of the calories you're consuming are from plants, fruits and vegetables, nuts, beans, whole grains. And you're eating little or no meat, and when you do, it's different sorts of meat. It's very lean meats, chicken, fish, and very small amounts. If you look at the sort of traditional Mediterranean diets, the meat that is incorporated in the diet was really used more as a flavoring tool than it was as a main dish or main portion of the meal. So that's pretty much what I mean. Now, with regards to which phytochemicals are important, that's an excellent question, and the answer is all of them. And that's what is such a critical thing to me, that we continue to have this sort of reductionist approach to nutrition, where we notice that people who eat tomatoes have lower rates of prostate cancer, and so we look around at what's in a tomato and we come up with one particular nutrient called lycopene, and we think, well, that's got to be it. So we start concentrating lycopene and putting it in pills and giving it to people. Well, it turns out that doesn't make any difference with regards to prostate cancer. They have to eat the whole tomato because it's the lycopene in combination with the hundreds of other nutrients that are in that tomato that are giving the benefit for health and cancer reduction. So you really need all of them, and the good news is that nature has put them in a package that is just exactly the right proportions. You really would have a hard time overdosing yourself on a particular nutrient if you ate a whole foods sort of diet.
Cool. To change gears a little bit, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your new audiobook, The Weight Loss, how they did it, and about the people who changed their lives forever. I listened to the book and found it to be really compelling and interesting. Just from the aspect of if someone wants to really make a change in their life, this audiobook kind of gives them, I feel like it empowers people, I guess is the way to put it. It feels very empowering to listen to it, and I like that aspect of it. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that book.
Sure, and thank you for asking about that. Well, let me just back up and say that I never intended to be a weight loss doctor when I started Fitness Rocks. In fact, I was very clear in my own mind that I would stay away from that because of things you've already brought up, like the Atkins Diet. And it just had such an affiliation with quackery. Even though it's clearly an important issue as today more than ever. And when I was going through my medical training, doctors who did weight loss were viewed with a great deal of suspicion. But that's all changed in the last few decades because we have gotten this incredible problem with obesity and obesity-related illnesses, and now there really is a need for some rational information on effective weight loss. The other thing that came up was as I started Fitness Rocks, I was getting emails, and most of the emails were about weight loss. That's what people wanted to know about and hear about. So as I was going along, I was getting various emails, and some people were telling me their stories of how they successfully lost weight, and I just got the idea one day that it would be interesting to interview some of these people and get their stories, how they did it, as the title implies. And so I put out a message on my website and in my podcast asking for people who wanted to volunteer to tell their stories, and I was very lucky that several people wanted to. I picked 4 of them, I interviewed them, and I mixed their stories together with my own observations from the medical literature. The audiobook is referenced to 30 or 40 articles, which is available as a free download from the website. And it worked out pretty well. I combined their stories with what the medical research says about an effective approach to weight loss. And it really, the bottom line of the audiobook is that it tries to make, I hope it makes successfully, the point that weight loss is not a primary goal. Becoming fit and living a healthy lifestyle is the primary goal, and weight loss follows as a consequence of that. And that's certainly consistent with the story of the 4 people on the audiobook. That's exactly how their weight loss came about and how they've been able to successfully maintain it for several years, which is really the important part. A lot of people can lose a fair amount of weight, and as we know, most of them have a difficult time maintaining that weight loss. So these guys not only successfully lost their weight, but they have kept it off for quite a while because of the changes in their lifestyle.
Excellent. Along those lines, I often hear people say, the size that you are isn't really what's important. It's your fitness level. I mean, I hear this kind of tidily summed up in a fat is fit kind of mantra every so often. And I'm wondering if you could maybe talk about that. Do you think that there's any truth to this one can be fat and fit notion, or, what's your opinion on all that?
Okay. Stephen Blair has been a leader in the research on the concept of being fat and fit, which is his phrase, not mine. And has shown that, in fact, people who are overweight and obese but maintain very high levels of fitness measured on a treadmill stress test actually do have similar rates of chronic disease to people who are thin. And they, in fact, are better off than people who are thin and out of shape. Now, in his research, the people who had the lowest rates of disease were the people who were thin and very fit. But to sum up, the people who are overweight or obese but maintain or achieve high levels of fitness do, in fact, recognize significant improvements in their health. Not even Dr. Blair suggests that that's, you can stop at that point. He would tell you, I'm sure, that you would be even better off by losing weight. But the reason I think that's important is because a lot of people that start a fitness program get very frustrated after a few weeks that they haven't lost enough weight and they give up. And what I tell people is that no, by simply improving your aerobic fitness, even though you may not have lost a lot of weight yet, you have already begun to make a significant difference in your risk for heart disease and other chronic diseases simply by becoming more fit. And I might just add as an aside, there are lots of studies that show that measured aerobic fitness is as strong a risk factor or an independent risk factor for heart disease as any of the other traditional risk factors, to include smoking and cholesterol. So how fit a person is when they get on a treadmill and they test to see how far and how fast they can go, that is as important in determining the risk of heart disease as whether or not they smoke cigarettes or have a high cholesterol. So the short answer to your question is yes, there is something to the fat and fit concept.
Interesting. So it seems that, both diet and exercise are important. But what are some of the other benefits that including exercise into one's lifestyle what are some of the benefits that can do for a person? You mentioned lower risk factors for diseases, but what else?
Well, that's a great question, and the list is very long, and I'll do my best to remember all of them. But a regular exercise program has a tremendous number of benefits. I just did a podcast a couple of weeks ago which reviewed a research paper that was posted on the Public Library of Science. And these researchers are involved with researching the effects of aging and what can be done to, if possible, reverse some. I hate to say age reversal because that just sounds like a quack thing right off the bat, but that's what their research is about. And they did an interesting and very elegant study where they looked at a group of young people and a group of older people, people over 65, and they wanted to see how their skeletal muscle cells differed, and they used genetic expression as the tool for determining how their skeletal muscles were different. And they found 596 different genes that are differentially expressed as we get older. They then took the older group of patients and put half of them through a regular weightlifting program for 6 months, twice a week, so it wasn't an overwhelming program. And they retested the genetic expression and found that something like 179 of those genes that had begun to be expressed differently with age reversed and had a younger pattern of expression, which to me is just absolutely fascinating. If you think about the fact that simply going to the gym and exercising has an age reversal effect at a genetic level, that's just staggering to me that we can now find that. Yeah, it's very cool. But so staying young would be sort of an umbrella reason to exercise as well as eat right. But exercise is also associated with lower rates of chronic depression, which is a big problem as we get older. A lot of older people suffer from depression, and exercise has a definite role in helping to reverse that. Exercise doesn't only make our muscles stronger, it also makes our bones stronger, and it's a central role in preventing osteoporosis and osteoporotic-related fractures as we get older. Exercise has also been shown to help reduce the rates of Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. So it's just across the board. What research is clearly showing is that exercising regularly and eating a healthy diet keeps our body in a highly functional, disease-free state. And it really does have to come as the whole package.
Excellent. Well, one of the things that vegans hear a lot is that you can't be a competitive athlete or a bodybuilder on a plant-based diet. What would you say to people who say that, have that?
Yeah, well, that's just untrue. As you know, I'm sure, you can get, the issue, of course, in most people's mind is protein. And protein is available in plants. There was this concept of high-quality protein and low-quality protein based on whether or not a particular source of protein contained all of the 9 essential amino acids. And most animal products do. Meat and eggs and dairy, the protein available from those sources has, and the single source has all of the essential amino acids, meaning the amino acids that our body cannot manufacture itself. It has to get them from the diet. Most plant sources, really except for soy, are not complete. In other words, if you ate a black bean dish, you would get lots of protein, but you might not get all of the essential amino acids. However, if you eat a variety of different types of plants, you will get all of the essential amino acids. So it's very easy to get all the protein that we need from a plant-based diet. But you do have to pay attention. If your diet was all carrots and broccoli, you would have a hard time coming up with enough protein. But if you eat appropriate plant sources of protein, which include beans and grains, there's plenty of protein out there. The other thing is that you're getting that protein in a much healthier package because it's not coming laden with saturated fat and nowadays all of the various drugs and hormones that are used to raise these animals, not to mention the PCBs and the mercury that are contaminating the fish that we eat. You're getting the protein from plants in a package that's loaded with fiber, other nutrients that we've talked about already, the plant-based nutrients, phytonutrients. So it's a much healthier way to get your protein. So if you're a competitive athlete, you can certainly get an adequate amount of protein from your diet. And I'll just mention for sort of the standard recommendations for protein for an average person who's average activity level is about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. For a really highly competitive athlete, I've seen some sources recommend as much as 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But if you look at what some of the various supplement manufacturers and other people are recommending, they're recommending doses of protein well beyond that. There's no evidence that that's of any value in improving performance, and there's lots of evidence that it may have some harmful effects with regards to damaging our kidney and liver and the process of handling all of that protein. So it's very easy to get all the protein you need from a well-balanced and well-thought-out plant-based diet.
Excellent. So is it, I mean, you mentioned that one study, but is it true that athletes need higher protein requirement?
That seems to be the consensus of articles that I've read about that. And I'll be the first to admit that sports nutrition is not an area that is at the top of my list of interests. But everything that I've read suggests that a really highly competitive athlete who's putting in several hours a day of training does need an additional amount of protein to keep up with repairing muscles that are, when we exercise, we're basically inflicting a stress on our muscles, and that's how we get muscle growth and increases in muscle strength, and that requires protein to have that happen. So I would have to say, and I have to agree with anybody who said that athletes need more protein, that that's certainly consistent with all of the things that I have read regarding the requirements for protein in athletes, that they do need a little bit more. But again, as I said, the average person, about 0.8 grams per kilogram. Highly competitive athletes, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.6 grams per kilogram. So an average size man of 30 years ago, 70 kilograms, would need perhaps, what would that work out, 1.7 times, roughly 100 grams of protein, compared to, if he was a competitive athlete, compared to 60 grams if he was just an average person getting an average amount of activity. There's a disparity between people based on how vigorously they're exercising.
Well, it's good to know, though, that we can get all of that from plants.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last comment.
Oh, I was just saying that it's at least good to know that we can get all of that protein requirement from plants.
Yeah, I think so. You have to pay attention. You have to put some effort into it and sort of look at what you're eating and make sure you're balancing that out. But I will go... I exercise pretty hard, I'll add. I exercise at least a couple of hours a day, and I go weeks and sometimes months without eating any source of animal protein at all, and really only when it sort of presents itself in a way that I can't refuse it. Usually when we go out for dinner with people and there's the only thing I can order on the menu that looks remotely healthy is something with fish.
We got to get you to go vegan, Dr. Monty.
Well, I'm pretty much there. I really am. And when I'm shopping, I never buy meat. I don't even like it, really. I just prefer. It's the funniest thing. I'm sure you found the same thing. When you eat a diet, as I've been eating a diet based primarily on fruits and vegetables for well over 25 years, that's just what I prefer. When I go out to a restaurant and order brunch, I just, all I want them to bring me is a big bowl of fruit. Scrambled eggs and bacon just has absolutely no appeal to me whatsoever.
Good to hear. So I guess to close things out a little bit, you kind of summed some of this up in the show, but maybe we could get a really kind of a concise answer for the people out there. I know a lot of people are kind of skeptical of kind of diet and exercise. They think, well, I'm young, I don't have to worry about it. Or, it won't catch up with me. Or I'm really too busy to do this stuff. What would you kind of say to that person to kind of maybe shock them out of their complacency, or maybe not to shock them, but to get them up off their butt and get them moving?
Yeah, I would give them two numbers to think about. The first number, and I'll explain these after I've given to you. The first number is 365,000. The second number is 2 trillion. 365,000 is the number of people, just Americans, not worldwide, just in our country, that are estimated to die every year as a consequence of poor diet and lack of exercise. So think about it. That's a lot of people. That's more people than die in automobile accidents. That's more people than have died in all of the wars America has fought combined since our beginning. And that's every single year. And that's felt to be a very conservative estimate. It's believed that within a few years, poor diet and lack of exercise will surpass cigarette smoking as the major actual cause of death. What they mean by that is that people who die of heart disease or cancer are getting those diseases and dying from them as a consequence of poor diet and health. So it's an enormous number of people who die every year prematurely from poor diet and lack of exercise. The second number, 2 trillion, is the amount of money we spend in this country every year on health care. And about 75% of that is spent treating chronic diseases, which are diseases of our lifestyle, what we eat, whether or not we exercise. So in the 4 or 5 years we've been fighting the war in Iraq, we've spent upwards of $600 or $700 billion. Every single year of that war, we have spent $2 trillion on health care in this country. It dwarfs everything we spend money on. And if you think about the consequences of the generation of 10-year-old kids today who are developing type 2 diabetes, which means when they're 25 or 30, they're going to start having their first round of heart attacks, kidney failure, and blindness from diabetes, that is going to basically be a devastating blow to our economy. We simply won't be able to sustain that level of chronic disease happening in such a young population. So I would think that those 2 numbers should be enough to get anybody's attention who is able to think rationally about their health and their future.
Excellent point. Anything else you want to discuss before we close it out?
No, I want to thank you guys for having me on and keep up the great work with your vegan radio podcast. It's really outstanding, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing, especially since I myself was really not so much aware of the animal rights issue until I began to listen to you guys. So I appreciate you for that.
Good to hear. Thank you. And we just want to also mention that people can find your podcast at fitnessrocks.org. Also, they can download your audiobook there, Weight Loss, How They Did It for People Who Changed Their Lives Forever. And it's about $16 or something, right?
Yeah, I think $15.63 or something to that effect.
And it's well worth it. I bought a copy and listened to it, and I very much enjoyed it. And it's it's a really educational and empowering book. So, Dr. Monty, thank you very much for being on the show. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob and Jenna.
Okay, thanks once again to Dr. Monty. Go listen to his podcast, fitnessrocks.org. It's very interesting.
Very interesting.
What?
No.
Oh.
It's cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I have to just say, like, the more we exercise, the more I just think it's good for your overall well-being.
Absolutely.
It's just amazing what it does for your brain.
I think it helps. There's no question it helps me think.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds weird, but I feel a lot clearer mentally.
Me too.
That could just be an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not any clearer.
No, but I think it helps. I mean, it helps you deal with stress. It helps deal with just like being pent up in an office all day.
Yeah.
And, it just makes you feel more confident, just better overall.
At the end of the day, I look forward now. Like I used to I never dreaded running, but there were days where I was like, I don't feel like it or whatever. Even today, I didn't really feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
I told you when we were coming home, I was like, I don't feel like running today. But I get up and I do it, and then I feel a lot better because it allows me to blow off a lot of stress. And then I get outside and I'm running with the dogs. Mm-hmm. The running dogs of socialism. And we're out running and it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm outside and I'm moving around and it feels really good at that point.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of days I crave it. So
yeah, I do too when I don't have it. So I've been, I think for those of you that are out there on the edge of exercise, perhaps not ready to go into that, having been there, I have to tell you, it's worth it once you do it. It takes a little while to get into it. Once you're into it, it's good. Mm-hmm. It's really good for you. I mean, and I don't mean like, oh, it's good for you, like you should take your vitamins. I mean, it's good for you in ways like it just makes you feel a lot better as a human being, as a person. So, I don't know. You're all unique and special snowflakes. We want all of you to be healthy and happy, little vegan freak listeners. But anyway.
Yes. Although today on our run, I was going not vegan because I accidentally inhaled a bug.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
not fun.
No, but that sucks. I've done that before. On the bike too.
It's hard to avoid.
It is. But anyway, thank you for your patience, everyone. We'll be back again with more Vegan Freak Radio next week. Will we
next
not?
week. And we hope to have voicemails and emails next week as
we will dig through voicemails and emails. We'll get our asses back.
We got a lot of them.
We'll get back in gear and catch up. And we apologize for being gone for so long. Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
Really appreciate it. We know it's been a long time, and we appreciate your concern. We got really kind emails from a bunch of you, and, well, at least when I'm still reading them. And, you know, it's cool. We're not going to quit doing this ever.
Nope.
Well, not ever.
for a long time.
But not for a while. We've got too much invested in this in terms of, like, time and experience and knowledge.
Plus, we want a lot of people to go vegan.
Plus, we want people to go vegan and stay vegan. And what else?
Yeah.
We know.
You're working hard to put food on your family.
You're working hard to put vegan food on your family. So we're here to help you put vegan food on your family. All right?
All right.
Anyway, we'll be back again next week. Thanks for your patience, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Oops. See, that's the thing, you know, it's like I haven't done the show in a long time, and like I can't control the sliders.
I know the human being and fish can coexist peacefully.